time can we regenerate parts of Ascension Island. And it's only a little island, and he had two big hills, mountains, and one he left as a control, which was called Bald Mountain, and the other one he planted trees on, which he called Green Mountain. So now 150 years later, Green Mountain, which is about 2,000 hectares altogether, not big, gets 20% more rainfall. Now the trouble was, it's very serious, because he planted all sorts of exotic trees on Green Mountain to rebuild the rain, and because there's more rain and the trees have expanded, because they're exotics, they've called them weeds. And then they say we have to destroy Green Mountain because they're made of weeds. So we've sort of said, no, they're very, very precious points, and it's a globally important experiment. But the point is, look, the point is that, yes, even 2,000 hectares of Green Mountain, 20% more rainfall, creating biosystems that are expanding. Okay, but that's 150 years, which is a long time. But another colleague, Willie Smits, in Kalimantan, Borneo, and he's into orangutan rescues. He rescues baby orangutans, and so he had to create a rainforest to have a home for them. And yeah, he's taken about 5,000 hectares of wasteland in the middle of oil plant plantations, and he's regenerated a rainforest in the last 15 years. And that now too is getting 15 to 25% more rainfall. But that is Kalimantan. So every situation, but the answer is it's almost on a catchment scale. But for Andhra Pradesh, yeah, I mean, we need to look at this, but the question, are there catchments? Are there catchments, you know, on the slopes, right, where that sort of scale of agroforestry, replanting, what effect would that have in harvesting more water in this fire pump effect? So yeah, that sort of area and that sort of timing, you know, so yeah, I would hope within 10 years we could document that. And we were talking earlier about methods, very simple, absolute methods where we can measure that effect.
And you can say in Telugu, it's fine, yeah.
One thing, because one is about the water cycle that you were talking about in your class in the morning. So one doubt I got is whether transpiration losses are more or the evaporation losses are more from the soil water.
Okay, so
What ultimately, because unless there is a water in the soil, plants cannot get that water and transpiration can't happen. If you leave it open, then there will not be any cover of plants.
right.
So which one is the losses?
Okay, so the relationship between transpiration and evaporation and cover, yes? Okay. So maybe it makes sense to have somebody else doing the writing, partly because my handwriting is not so good. Yeah?
My handwriting, I'm making it.
Okay.
Not the best.
And yeah. Transpiration, evaporation, and cover. So like ratios.
The second, and one of the examples were given about an undisturbed ecosystem which is forest.
Yes.
And even there, the ecological succession happens. In some of the forests, we see the Lantana camera taking over other plants, and in the croplands, you can see foundation, most of the what you call Congress grass taking over other weeds. So Parthenium. So this ecological succession is also acting there on the field. So how do we see this? The change in the ecosystems and when we leave undisturbed and
Okay, we're going to get to that in another one. So yeah, that's a very good question, and ask it again when we're talking about kind of more the soil food web and reading your weeds and all of that. So yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
You said that like when it's cold, the plants are like condensing, and then when it's warm, they're basically transpiring. But then, how cold and how warm, and do they transpire and condense at the same time? And it's a balance question, or how does it happen?
Very good question. So you can write it up. Yes.
One more.
Let's hear from other people first. Who else has a question? And any question is fine. It could be just, I don't understand this word. That's totally fine, because we want you to understand it very clearly. Are there any words here that you don't know? For anybody?
I wanted to ask, what is the contribution of leaf surface area or the size of the blade of the leaf in condensation or transpiration? Actually,
Great.
Pine trees, it's an adaptation to reduce transpiration. But are they able to harvest or condense the water vapor?
Yes, actually, so the sequoias, the ones I was talking about that are harvesting so much water, is more in that kind of family. So,
Pines.
yeah. I don't know if it's specifically, Walter, is a sequoia pine?
Which pine?
Is a sequoia in the pine family?
The sequoia is one of the conifers, it's not
Yeah,
a pine.
it's a
but yes,
conifer,
something-
I think that's the word, yeah.
Yes.
So yes. So, and that is incredible dew harvesting capacity. Yeah,
70% of its moisture in the Cascade Ranges comes from dew.
but I think the question is really a good one. We're going to keep the question. That was a specific answer, but the leaf area, the leaf type, how does it relate to this?
Yes.
Yeah, great question.
So, since plants harvest
Humidity.
Yeah,
In some areas, it will be 50% only, and condensation also, how
Yeah.
much it depends.
yeah. Great. So the question was relative humidity and how does that affect it? Yes.
Yeah. The wind actually suitable, I mean, the best situations where the windbreak works actually. If there is no water there, could we have this windbreak?
So-
There is no water in that landscape.
Yeah. You mean can you grow a windbreak if there's not enough
Yeah,
water?
yeah. That's
Good
right.
question. So like how would you, if you had a situation where you had no or very little water, how would you grow something tall enough?
Yes. And also linking to the same person actually, if there is a natural growth of these things, vegetative coverage of forestry, the man-made forest is there actually. How best we can use the existing forest as a windbreak?
Okay, good. You got that? Yeah. What else? Some more women have questions? Women? Okay, so other than these questions, you feel ready to explain this to people? Okay.
You have to do it in landscape area. You have to go for large areas. So when you think about this, how to cover large areas in a short time, and we are thinking with farmers where they have patches, as you said, how to cover a large area to generate that kind of impact.
Okay, so how to quickly cover a large enough area to generate that impact?
Where there is no vegetation, because for
Yeah.
the water cycle, when there is no vegetation at all, then
Yeah,
how to expand them.
yeah, great. Okay, yeah. So where are we at in the day? Do you want to do one more or should we stop?
One more what topic?
Yeah.
So, in terms of logistics, I don't know if lunch is ready and if we should stop now or cover one more topic. Are you going to answer these or now or
So
what's the plan for these questions?
Yeah, we could go ahead and answer,
Maybe
and
we
then
can answer these
that'll be,
ones
and then
we
we'll
have
have lunch. Perfect. Okay.
Okay,
So
let me know if you read.
I'm just gonna see if. Yeah, I'm gonna have you come up and answer them, but we want to try to answer them before lunch. So we want really just the short kind of science version, in terms of being just so they know how to explain it a little bit more.
Right. So question.
Relationship between transpiration, evaporation, and plant cover. What is the relationship?
Right. The relationship between evaporation, transpiration, and plant cover. Well, obviously, green plants transpire as long as there's soil water. So you can simply say the leaf area exposed of green times then the air flowing past it, because the wind speed has an effect, will relate to the amount of water that's transpiring from that plant. Okay, the evaporation is same sort of situation. If you have air flowing across bare soil, then it again will desiccate or take water from that bare soil and go into the air. But if you have it covered, then obviously it's protected. So if you have a mulch surface, it won't lose water by evaporation. Your objective to maximize growth is to get all the water producing VJ's 365 days of green growth. You see, so what we want to do is maximize transpiration, because that's green growth, and minimize water loss by evaporation. It takes about 1,000 mils or 1 litre of water to grow 1 gram of biomass. So 2 bottles of water to grow 1 gram of plant matter. So we don't want to waste the water, okay? So if we're losing most of the water to evaporation, we can't grow as much.
Okay, do you want to give a short...
సో ఇందాక సార్ అడిగిన క్వశ్చన్కి ఎవాపరేషన్ నిల్వ ఉన్న నీరు ఆవిరైపోతే, లేదంటే మొక్కల ద్వారా తీసుకున్న నీరు ఆవిరైపోయే దానిలో లాస్ దేని నుంచి ఎక్కువ ఉంది, ఏ లాస్ మనకు నష్టం చేస్తుంది అని అడిగిన అనమాట. సో దానికి ఆన్సర్ ఏం చెప్తుందంటే, ఉట్టిగా ఉన్న నీళ్ళ నుంచి ఎవాపరేషన్ అయినా అంటే ఆవిరైతున్న నీళ్ళ వల్ల మనకు ఎటువంటి ఉపయోగం ఉండదు, ప్లస్ దానివల్ల వేడి ఎక్కువ అవుతుంటుంది. తర్వాత ఆ నీటిని మళ్ళీ మనం ఉపయోగించుకోలేము. బట్ అదే చెట్ల ద్వారా తీసుకున్న నీళ్ళు ఏదైతే మన ట్రాన్స్పిరేషన్ సో అది జరగడం వల్ల నీరు మొక్క తీసుకొని ఆకుల ద్వారా బయటకు పంపించడం ద్వారా మనకు చాలా ఉపయోగాలు ఉన్నాయి. లైక్ చెట్టు యొక్క శరీరానికి చల్లబడుతుంది, అదేవిధంగానే వాతావరణం కూడా చల్లబడుతుంది. నీళ్లు ఏదైతే మనం ఈ నీళ్లు ట్రాన్స్పిరేషన్ ద్వారా బయటకు పోయిన నీళ్లు మళ్ళీ మేఘాలుగా ఫార్మ్ అయ్యి కండెన్సేషన్ ద్వారా మళ్ళీ వర్షం పడుతుంది. సో ఇంత సైకిల్ జరుగుతుంది. సో ట్రాన్స్పిరేషన్ జరగడం మంచిది. ట్రాన్స్పిరేషన్ వల్లనే ఈ వాటర్ సైకిల్ ముందుకు పోతుంది.
Okay. The second question is, how does the balance between condensation and transpiration change related to temperature? Like, are these happening at the same time? Because we said at night,
okay.
like it's condensating and it's...
Right, they happen at different times. Transpiration happens during the day when there's sunlight and the stomata are open. The plant is losing water through the stomata because they've got the stomata open to absorb carbon dioxide to make sugars. So transpiration happens during the day. That water goes into the air as water vapor, but then it condenses in the air to form those mists and clouds and hazes that we saw in Dee Dee's beautiful photograph this morning from Vermont. But it's beautiful everywhere, you know. Anywhere where there's clouds, it's beautiful because it means there's water. Condensation happens when at night time that water can't sort of stay in the air, or it's cooling, and it then condenses onto surfaces. Okay, and obviously, as Dee Dee explained, because the leaves are transpiring, to do that they've got to take heat. Therefore, the leaves are normally cooler because they've lost a lot of heat, and then they're good surfaces for condensation. A lot of leaves also have what we call solutes. They've got salts or resins, and that again makes them hygroscopic. That means they suck in water and they're good condensation surfaces. So that happens at different time. One is water going from liquid to gas and escaping, and the other is basically gas forming little droplets, fog cloud droplets, and then those droplets condensing on cooler surfaces.
మొదటిది ట్రాన్స్పిరేషన్ ఏదైతే మనం నీళ్ళు మొక్కల ద్వారా నీటిని ఏదైతే మనం లాస్ అవుతున్నామో అది వేడిగా ఉన్న టైంలో పొద్దున టైంలో జరుగుతుంది. తర్వాత రెండోది వాయువులో ఉన్న గాలిలో ఉన్న తేమని మళ్ళీ మనం నీళ్ళ రూపంలో తీసుకుని రావడానికి ఒక టెంపరేచర్ డిఫరెన్స్ అనేది ఉండాలా. సో మొదటి దాంట్లో ఏం జరుగుతుందంటే వేడి వల్ల ఆ మొక్క చల్ల చేసుకునే దానికోసం అని చెప్పి నీటిని లాస్ అవుతుంది. తర్వాత లాస్ అయిన నీటిని వేరే టైంలో అంటే ఒకటే టైంలో జరగకపోవచ్చు, తర్వాత నైట్ టైం. సో టెంపరేచర్ ఎప్పుడైతే డిఫరెన్స్ ఉంటుందో ఆ టైంలో మళ్ళీ గాలిలో ఉన్న తేమని నీళ్ళ రూపంలో తీసుకోగలుగుతుంది.
40,000 litres of water a day, okay, and condensation of a night time can be 1 to 2 millimetres across surface areas, but that depends on what level of cool surface area you've got. But again, there can be significant quantities of water going up and coming down.
సో పెద్ద పెద్ద అడవుల్లో ఒక రోజుకి 40,000 లీటర్ల నీళ్లు చెట్ల ద్వారా అంటే ఈ మొక్కలు తీసుకున్న నీటిని ట్రాన్స్పిరేషన్ రూపంలో లాస్ అవుతున్నాయి. ప్లస్ ఒక రోజు కండెన్సేషన్ చూసుకున్నట్లయితే గాలిలో ఉన్న తేమని మళ్ళీ నీళ్లు లైక్ భూమి ఇప్పించుకోగలిగే దాంట్లో రేట్ చూసినట్లయితే 4 mm వాటర్ని తీసుకోగలుగుతాం.
Okay, next.
Next question.
Haven't got plants, it is often drier, and you just depend on the water flowing in from the oceans. But yeah, I think you haven't got plants, it is often drier, and you just depend on the water flowing in from the oceans. But yeah, I think you
How does the leaf area and type affect condensation?
Okay, well, we've already partly answered. The actual leaf area is important because, yes, it's an area of cool surface, 1 to 2 millimetres per, surface a night. So the area does affect it, but obviously there's a point at which there's so much area, you've run out of water. The type also varies, as we've already said. Some are hygroscopic. We have salt bushes in our desert. You have salt bushes in Rajasthan, and that is extra good at harvesting water. The cacti, the succulents also harvest water. The Peropsis, the weeds you've got here, well, those bushy weeds, they harvest water. Okay, so plants are very, very well adapted, and yes, they vary.
మొక్క ఒక రకంగా కండెన్సేషన్ చేసుకోగలుగుతుంది. కొన్ని మొక్కలు ఏరియా అంటే ఆకు యొక్క విస్తరణ వల్ల అంటే ఆకు వైశాల్యం వల్ల కొన్ని కండెన్సేషన్ చేసుకోవచ్చు. కొన్ని మొక్కలు అడాప్టేషన్ వల్ల అంటే కొన్ని మొక్కలు ఇందాక చెప్పుకున్నట్టుగా ఉప్పు కలిగిన వల్ల నీటిని ఎక్కువ ఆకర్షిస్తాయి, ఎక్కువ పీల్చుకోగలుగుతాయి. కొన్ని మొక్కలు ఎడారి మొక్కలు ఎక్కువగా నీళ్ళని తీసుకోగలుగుతాయి. ఎందుకంటే వాటి యొక్క అవసరాన్ని బట్టి వాటి యొక్క అడాప్టేషన్ బట్టి కండెన్సేషన్ అనే రేట్ ఉంటుంది.
Yeah, I apologize. That's prosopis, not Peropis. Yeah, okay.
Okay, next question. Is plant condensation the only mechanism that plants can use to harvest water?
It is the mechanism that is used for the top of the plant, for the leafy part. Plants, of course, harvest water from soils through their roots and through their mycorrhizal fungi. But certainly for the canopy, that condensation is the dominant process. both leaf area and then hygroscopic solutes, as in cacti and salt bushes.
కండెన్సేషన్ వల్ల మాత్రమే ఎక్కువ నీటిని మనం గాలిలో ఉన్న తేమని ఎక్కువ తీసుకోగలమా అని అనుకుంటే దానివల్ల పైన పైన ఉన్న ఏదైతే భాగం ఉంటుందో ఏదైతే ఉంటుందో దానికి కండెన్సేషన్ ఎక్కువ ఉపయోగపడుతుంది అన్నమాట వాటర్ అందించడానికి.
Thank you.
Okay.
కండెన్సేషన్ ఒకే విధానమా అని అడిగారు.
Does condensation happen under all conditions? For example, dry, cool?
No, thank you. Very important. No, different rates of condensation depends on temperature, relative humidity, how much that surface has been able to cool, and the general airflows. And this is the important point, because we in agroforests can create conditions which are better for condensation. If we have a bare, exposed, windy area, then often, even with low temperatures, you don't get condensation because the water molecules can't settle. So we have agency to enhance condensation, which is really our opportunity.
What should be the minimum area for that kind of a situation?
What should be, sorry?
Minimum area.
Minimum area.
Oh, we will have to do experiments in zero budget natural farming to work out the optimum area of forest, the optimum density of trees. Actually, this is very important. We've been talking about it. We will give you a very simple, elegant, practical method for measuring harvesting, condensation harvesting, and we will be very interested to work with you to measure this, and you will be the world's first understanding of condensation from different canopies, as you're asking.
ఇందాక క్వశ్చన్ ఏంటంటే కండెన్సేషన్ ఎటువంటి పరిస్థితుల్లో జరుగుతుంది అంటే పొద్దున వేడిగా ఉండి తర్వాత రాత్రి చల్లగా ఉండి అదొకటే సూటబుల్ గా ఉంటే జరుగుతుంది అంటున్నారు. బట్ ఆన్సర్ అయితే అదొకటే కాదనమాట. కండెన్సేషన్ జరగడానికి రీజన్ చాలా ఉన్నాయి, చాలా కారణాలు ఉన్నాయి. ఎక్కువ గాలి వచ్చిన వాటర్ మాలిక్యూల్స్ అంటే తేమ మొత్తం అక్కడ ఉండదు కాబట్టి ఆ తేమని మళ్ళీ మనం నీళ్ళలాగా తీసుకోలేము వాయువులో నుంచి. తర్వాత
కండెన్సేషన్ అనేది ఒక ప్రాంతంలో ఇంకో ప్రాంతంలో మార్పు ఉంటుంది.
Yeah. Zero budget natural farming is a world leader. It is the only thing that is thinking about how do we harvest water from the air. Everybody else is still looking at their rain gauges, empty rain gauges, empty dams, and despairing. And you are basically showing the way for the future.
జెపిఎన్ఎఫ్ మాత్రమే ప్రపంచంలో వర్షాల మీద కానీ రైన్ గేజ్ల గురించి ఆలోచించకుండా అసలు వాతావరణంలో ఉన్న నీటిని ఏ విధంగా మనం యూజ్ చేసుకోవాలి, వాతావరణంలో ఉన్న అంటే ఎవరికి తెలియని నీటిని మనం ఉన్నట్టుగా గుర్తించి దాన్ని ఎలా యూజ్ చేసుకోవాలి అని ప్రపంచంలో మొదటిసారిగా ఓన్లీ మనం మాత్రమే ఆలోచిస్తున్నాం.
Okay, next question. Next question. How does relative humidity affect condensation?
How does what humidity? Relative humidity. Yes. I mean, relative humidity measures the amount of water in the air relative to how much potentially can be held at that temperature. And obviously, the higher the relative humidity, the more water is there ready to condense. Okay, yes, so it affects it. If you have very dry air with very low relative humidity, it's not going to have a lot. But we have now right across the tropical world, Middle East, India, very, very dangerous conditions. We have lots of situations where we end up with 80% plus relative humidities all year round, temperatures over 40 degrees centigrade, and this humid heat is one of the biggest risk factors for human survival, because if it gets to that above 38 At high humidities, we can't cool ourselves. We overheat, we die as mammals. And so basically this condensation, removing that water from the air, becomes not just the basis of 365 green, it becomes a basis of leaving or enabling vast regions in tropical areas to be habitable by mammals, including humans.
రిలేటివ్ హ్యూమిడిటీ వల్ల కండెన్సేషన్ ఏ విధంగా ఎఫెక్ట్ అవుతుంది అని అడిగినారు. సో నిజానికి రిలేటివ్ హ్యూమిడిటీ ఎక్కువ ఉండడం వల్ల కండెన్సేషన్ రేట్ ఎక్కువ ఉండాలి. కానీ ఈస్టర్న్ కంట్రీస్లో, మిడిల్ ఈస్ట్ కంట్రీస్లో హై టెంపరేచర్స్ ఉండడం వల్ల మన శరీరంలో వేడి ఎక్కువైపోయి మనం చల్లబడలేకపోతున్నాం అన్నమాట. సో అంటే
40 degrees centigrade ఉన్నప్పుడు
80% RH ఉన్నా సరే 40 degrees centigrade కూడా ఉన్నప్పుడు హ్యూమిడ్ హేస్ లాగా ఉండి కూలింగ్ అవ్వలేదు.
That's not it's a dangerous situation.
Very dangerous. And the point is we have a solution, which is what you're doing.
Okay, if there is no water, how can we use existing forests as windbreaks?
We visited a pre-monsoon cover crop experiment where we were growing, a 2-meter high cover crop, 15 tons per hectare per annum pre-rain. So if we can grow a cover crop, we can grow, other windbreaks in the same way. We're going to document how that happens. That's part of our documentation. So yes, we can. Second part of the question.
How can we use existing forests as windbreaks?
Okay, and basic.
అసలు నీళ్ళే లేని చోట, అసలు నీళ్ళే లేని దగ్గర విండ్ బ్రేక్స్ ఏ విధంగా పెంచాలి అంటున్నారు. సో మనం అదే అనంతపూర్లో చూసింది PMDS ప్లాట్లో. అక్కడ కూడా నీళ్లు లేవేంలో, బట్ 2 meters హైట్ దాకా చెట్లు వెళ్ళినాయి. అది ఏ విధంగా జరిగింది ఏమి అనేది డాక్యుమెంటేషన్ చేసి తెలుసుకోవాల్సి ఉంటుంది.
And existing forests, not just forests, existing shelter woods, existing grasslands, yes, they all slow down the wind, they all act as windbreaks, and that's what we're doing when we put agroforests in. We're actually slowing that wind, because that wind is what desiccates, desertifies, and loses the water we need.
ఉన్న అడవితోనే మనం విండ్ బ్రేక్స్ గా యాడ్ చేస్తున్నాం అన్నమాట, ఉన్న అడవులన్నిటికీ. అందుకే మనం అగ్రోఫారెస్ట్ని ఎక్కువ ఎంకరేజ్ చేస్తున్నాం అన్నమాట.
Okay, and the last question, cover an area if there is no real vegetation.
Yes, thank you. Well, you go to zero budget natural farming, and you look at the pre-season cover crop strategies, and you can use those strategies to regenerate and put green 365 everywhere, and it's perfecting and refining those strategies, which is then the only way you're going to do that.
అసలు ఇక్కడ ఎక్కువ మనం వాటర్ సైకిల్ గురించి ఇవన్నీ మాట్లాడుకున్నప్పుడు వెజిటేషన్ ఉన్నప్పుడు ఇవన్నీ తొందరగా జరుగుతాయి అనుకున్నాం. బట్ అసలు వెజిటేషన్ అంటే ఇక్కడ చెట్లు కానీ పొదలు కానీ ఏమి లేని దగ్గర ఎంత ఫాస్ట్గా ఇవి జరగాలంటే ఏం చేయాలి అంటే అదే చెప్తున్నారు. 365 days గ్రీన్ కవర్లో ఏదైతే ఒక స్ట్రాటజీ అంటే క్రాప్ కాంబినేషన్స్ కావచ్చు, ప్రోటోకాల్స్ ఏవైతే ఫాలో అయినారో వాటిని తెలుసుకుని ఆ స్ట్రాటజీ ద్వారా మనం ముందుకు పోవాలి.
And just to finish, there's an old Chinese proverb, and it asks, when is the best time to plant a tree? And the answer is 20 years ago. And the next question is, when is the second best time to plant a tree? And the answer is now, by you young people taking on zero budget natural farming. You have 10 years. Congratulations.
చైనాలో ఒక మాట ఉంది ఏమంటే ఒక క్వశ్చన్ అడిగారంట, ఎప్పుడు అంటే ఇదంతా జరుగుతుంది కాబట్టి మొక్కలు ఎప్పుడు పెంచడానికి రైట్ టైం ఏది అని అడిగారంట. ఈ క్వశ్చన్ ఇప్పుడు అడగాల్సింది కదా, 20 సంవత్సరాల ముందే పెంచాల్సింది అని. అదే 20 సంవత్సరాల ముందుగానే నాటేయాల్సింది చెట్లు అని. సో ఇప్పుడు సెకండ్ ఎప్పుడు మంచిగా ఉంటుందంటే ఈ రోజే నాటాలి. సో ఇక్కడ ఉన్న వాళ్ళందరూ యూత్ అంతా ఆలోచించి చెట్లు నాటడానికి మనం చేంజ్ చేయాలి.
So as Aunt Sophie said, no implication. Look, we have 71% of the planet is oceans, 4,000 meters deep. 3% of the land is water. What we are doing is we are cycling that water, as in the Amazon, so many times better. We are not running out of water. We are providing humanity with endless, safe water, harvested through these recycling systems. So it is a continual resource. The only thing that is missing is human wisdom to manage it wisely. But that's why you're here.
Can you just add on to that? It's a natural process that's always happened.
Oh, absolutely.
We're just making you aware of it. It's a natural process, so it cannot be that it's not something we're taking away.
Mother Nature has, as we said yesterday, Mother Nature has created these terrestrial biosystems and forests through this process, and all we are doing is taking our boot off her throat so she can restore these things. We're not doing anything. We're just allowing nature to rebuild healthy soils, healthy hydrology and futures.
Yeah, and I think that I agree, it's a great question because it gets at the whole system. And
Pipe or anything like that. So you basically have a pipe, and here you're just bringing humid air in. And of course, as you narrow the pipe, what happens? It gets ever higher pressure. Okay, so you're bringing in and you're making that water under higher pressure. And you're forcing it through. And then once you basically have that high pressure air, if you create a structure that then opens up in a big volume, you take high pressure air into a low pressure space. Okay? So it's not that different, is it? You come through high pressure, but then you go into a low pressure space. And as concentrated humid air, there's lots of water molecules into this air. As it comes, it of course becomes much more dispersed, low pressure. And low pressure air can only hold a fraction of the water that high pressure air has. So all that water has to condense. So it will form little droplets and condense and run out and fill out. So all you have to do is you have to take a funnel, force it down, high pressure. You can have a fan there pushing it down. You open it up into low pressure and it will condense most of its water continually. And all you do is you can harvest that water. And of course, that's exactly what happens with a mountain slope where you have water transpiring, moving up a mountain slope, increasing the high pressure. When it goes over the top of the hill, it's into lower pressure. And again, it drops the water. Happy birthday, Paulie.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, because you're, yeah.
వాటర్ ఏ విధంగా కండెన్స్ అవుతుందో చెప్పారు, బట్ దాన్ని మెజర్ చేయడం ఎలాగా అనేది ఆయన ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేస్తారు. వాటర్ వస్తుంది 1 mm 2 mm వరకు వాటర్ కండెన్స్ అవుతా ఉంది అనేది ఎలా మెజర్ చేయాలి?
Do you want to explain the little method, how you measure it? Well, whatever you like. Tell them a facility.
సో ఆయన ఏం చెప్తారంటే, ఒక బ్లాటింగ్ పేపర్ తీసుకొని డ్రై బ్లాటింగ్ పేపర్ దాన్ని ఒక కవర్లో పెట్టి ఫస్ట్ వే చేయాలి, అలాంగ్ విత్ ద కవర్. మళ్ళీ ఆ కవర్లో నుంచి ఆ బ్లాటింగ్ పేపర్ని తీసి నైట్ మనం ఎక్కడైతే ఈ డ్రై స్వింగ్ చేసిన మొక్కలు పెరిగాయో ఒకదానికి దాన్ని అంటించాలి. నైట్ మార్నింగ్ తీసుకొని మనం ముందు ఏ కవర్లో అయితే మెజర్ చేసామో అదే కవర్లో మళ్ళీ పెట్టాలి. పెట్టి మెజర్ చేస్తే వెయిట్ పెరుగుతుంది అది. సో ఎంత వెయిట్ పెరిగింది or దాని ప్లాటింగ్ పేపర్ ఏరియా ఉంటుంది, సర్ఫేస్ ఏరియా. సో ఎంత వెయిట్ పెరిగింది అనే దాన్ని చూస్తే మనకు మనం ఎంత వాటర్ కండెన్స్ చేయగలిగాము అనేది తెలుస్తుంది. So what does says is, you take a blotting paper and put it in a cover and wait take its dry weight, and then you take out the same paper and hang it near plant in our PMDS field overnight, and in the morning 5 o'clock something like that, take that paper, blotting paper, and put it back into the cover and take the weight. So that weight difference is a measure of how much water we have harvested. Have I read what?
And then you can have different treatments. So all you do is you hang this blotting paper in your cover crop and your conventional, and you can then see how much difference the water harvesting is. Or you can measure at 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and you'll find that it's only 6 o'clock in the morning, because by 8 o'clock it's evaporated again. And this way you can measure, yes, how much extra water your blotting paper has harvested. And of course it's very simple. You just hang the blotting paper, in the canopy. You go there, you drop it in a little plastic bag and seal it so it doesn't lose water. But you know how heavy the blotting paper was. You know how heavy the plastic bag is. It doesn't change weight. So you just weigh the wet blotting paper back in the office or laboratory or in the field if you've got a portable balance. And the difference in weight, you can say how much water per square centimetre has been harvested. And then you can convert that back to your crop. Because if you know your crop has got 100,000 square metres of leaf per hectare, you can get a relative measure of how much water that crop has harvested.
4,500 square meters per acre.
There's 10,000, per acre, there's 10,000 square metre per hectare, and you can do that, you see, and so then you can get a whole atmospheric water budget from this very simple experiment. And it's only up to creativity for you now to design how do we measure that. Is it more on the top of the mountain? Is it more in the valley? Is it more if I've got this species A compared to species B? You can become the world leaders in documenting aerial water harvesting for the world.
You have to hang the paper in the canopy. అంటే మీరు దాన్ని తీసుకెళ్ళి మనం మార్నింగ్ డ్రై వెయిట్ ఏది చూసామో అదే కవర్లో పెట్టి మళ్ళీ వే చేయాలి.
The water, and that's exactly what the blotting paper does. Any excess water to its absorption would run down the leaf, the petiole stem flow into the soil. But in most dry situations, most of that water would go directly into the plant to keep the plant hydrated.
As I remember, the plants kind of intake through so much water, no? There are some...
With this crop, what is a relative calibration to that leaf surface? Because if it only absorbs 20% of the water, 80% runs off, it's... So you're going to have... You have a standard method for measuring, and then you can calibrate that different crops, and then you can compare that crop on the calibration curve under different treatments.
So how do you calibrate it?
You can.
How do you do that calibration?
Leaf area index.
Okay.
You would look at a calibration for every crop to say sugarcane might be putting 60% of the water into the soil, 40% direct absorbed.
Maybe shallow roots, okay, is sufficient, maybe sufficient for the shallow roots.
Yeah.
But what about the deeper?
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree, because if you're harvesting 1 to 2 millimeters a night across all that surface area, even that would just provide water in the top 10 centimeters to keep things growing. But the water absorbed by the plant, of course, would directly help the whole physiology, survival of the plant.
I'm asking the same question. Plants need to take the nutrients through root system.
Yes, the nutrients have to come through. This is just water management, water harvesting. Okay, not nutrients.
If there is no sufficient moisture in the soil.
Yeah, look, no, this is not water for nutrient uptake. This is more nutrient water for plant growth, survival. The nutrient uptake, there's other processes involved. Yeah, so this is measuring harvesting of water from the air rather than nutrient uptake potential. We talked about it very briefly yesterday, there's so much information. The nutrient harvesting from the soil is by these mycorrhizal hyphae.
Yeah, we're going to get to that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Didi will get to that because that's another process.
Yes, that understood.
Didi, you had a question?
Well, I had one question about this.
Should be everywhere, B1, B2, B3, and you can relate it back to A1, A2, A3. So you don't have to have exactly the same, or you're saying relatively, okay, I can measure, I mean, this is how much water is being harvested under these conditions, and I may be saying the leaf is doing 30% of what the blotting paper is, or it may be doing 200% of what the blotting paper is. But,
and I was going to add another observation, though, is that even though a lot of that water may be evaporating, that as it's evaporating, it is actually cooling the plant, which is saving water for the plant because the plant is not needing to cool itself so much. So it's actually still participating in the plant physiology.
Certainly. But in a dry climate, you know, when, as we were saying, this is pre-season, pre-monsoon, you know, crop, that plant is desperately for every drop of water. So I would think it would be absorbing as much of that water either directly through the leaf or bringing it into the soil rather than letting it re-evaporate. So that if you went there, you know, 5 o'clock in the morning, yes, it's wet. By 7 o'clock, as Paulie says, it's probably dry because all that water would have been absorbed. But this is plant physiology, and you have a simple method, and you will be understanding that plant physiology better than anyone else because no one's ever done this.
Even the rate of transpiration differs from season to season.
Yes.
So in the summer it is more, and in the winter it is less.
Yeah. But again, you'll have to. This is a wonderful question because you will say, does transpiration influence how much water dew harvesting I have? Are they related? Question mark. They would be a little bit, wouldn't you think? But what they are, that's a graph that would be quite interesting to see.
So in the winter or during the rainy season, because the air is saturated,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? You actually probably measure more than that.
Yeah, if it's raining, you've got wet blotting paper, and
No, if it's wet, if it's, let's say during winter you have
yes,
you measure
yes,
greater weight on the blotting paper. During summer, during the dry season, you probably measure less.
yes. But certainly if it's raining, then the rainwater would completely override the harvest from dew. Yes.
And may I know what is the main purpose of transpiration? Is it to cool?
Okay. What is the main purpose of transpiration? No, what it is that the plant has to open its stomata to get CO2 coming in, because it needs that for its growth. So it can't avoid being exposed and losing some water. The plant also has to take nutrients up from trees, sequoia trees in California, 100 meters. So it needs to have the water stream going up to take nutrients into the factory making the sugars. So yes, it has to use water, but it doesn't matter as long as it harvests the water again, nothing is lost. So nature, it's a solar energy pulling up that water, transpiring, recovering, easy.